Hi and welcome back to my channel. Today we will have a look at the acrylic paints from Paul Rubens, and I'm going to make some mixed media tags with them. And of course I will also make some swatches and let you know my opinion on these paints. Paul Rubens was so kind and sent them to me to try them out and make a review video. The packaging is nothing I would say you can use to store those in. It's a bit unstable, but I don't mind that. I usually do almost every art supply out of the packaging and store it as close as I can. So I will throw these in a basket so I have them ready to go when I want to use them. For the swatches, I have pulled out my journal that I usually use to swatch acrylic paints or to explore different acrylic paints and how they mix together. And I will now swatch these. I will speed this process up a little bit so you don't get bored, and I will talk a little more about the paints. This set contains 24 acrylic paint tubes, and I would say you have the usual range in this set that you will get with every acrylic paint set. I'm starting with the white, of course. The paints are quite heavy body. You will see this when I play with them later on the tags. And what I've also recognized, they dry quite matte, and that's what I really like, because I don't like when acrylic paints are glossy. I feel when you then look at the finished artwork, it can be irritating depending on how the light hits. And also when you use them in your art journal, the glossier they are, the more the pages will stick together. And this is also why I like that these are quite matte. You can see the finish of them later in the video when the paints are dry. There is a lot of writing on the tubes with Chinese letters, so I cannot translate these. I don't know if this is the information about light fastness or something. The only thing I can read is the name of the colors which is on the tubes. I also didn't find a number. Well, I don't mind that. Once my swatches are dry, I will write the color names to the swatches so I know which color looks like what. This is something I found very important, so I can always have a look which color I am going to use in my swatch journal. I have to say, I'm not a big fan of the greens. I find all the paints are quite pigmented and they look really bright and intense. And what I also have the feeling, most of them are transparent. And with the greens, except from this, the sap green, which does not look like the sap green from other brands, I would say. I'm not a big fan, but that's often the case when it comes to greens. I find it really hard to use greens directly from the tube. But I will show you what you can do to let the greens look a bit more natural. And we will also mix a little bit so you can see how the blue and yellow can mix also a nice natural green. Well, it's just my preference. I'm not a big fan of these bright and intense greens. What I really like is are the browns, the burnt sienna, burnt umber, and I believe it's raw umber. These are really nice color tones, and also the Payne's gray is a really pretty color. I really like that one. These are all the 24 colors. As I said, I will write the names onto them once they are completely dry, and I will put a photo in the blog post of this video. I will link it up in the video description. Also in the video description you will find a discount code for you and the links to the paints. I'm now going to explore quickly how the yellow, I'm using the lemon yellow and I believe the ultramarine blue, mix a green, and also how you can turn a brighter green into a more natural green. And maybe you can here already see how thick the paint is. And I feel mixing a green is often much better than using greens directly from the tube. I will add a little bit of the burnt sienna here to get a more natural or olivey green. That's what I prefer to use, and depending how much of the burnt sienna you put into the mixture, the browner the green will get. And this is what you can do to all the greens you have. I'm picking, I believe the Viridian green, or is it the other, has a almost unpronounceable name. I believe it's green Thaylucyanine. And I added in something of the burnt umber, and that gives you a really nice and quite dark green. Finally, I think this is a nice selection of paints. I really like their finish. I like that they are heavy body, and I like the pigments. They are quite bright. We will now explore them a little bit more with some mixed media work. I believe you can't buy these open stock, and I also didn't find a number, just the names to identify them, but I think that's not a real problem. I have cut some tags from mixed media paper. It's around 200 GSM or maybe 230, and I die cut these, and now I'm going to just paint a background with the acrylics. I am laying a paper underneath the tag, so whenever I get some paint over the tag, it does not go on my surface. And also these leftover paint papers are really nice for collage work in future projects, and you don't waste any paint. I'm starting with the magenta, and this is one of my favorite colors. It's really bright and intense, and I can't see any difference to the magenta I have here from Schminke, which is quite expensive. And I dip my finger a little bit into water, and you can see how easily the paint bleeds with the water and it gives a nice liquidy look. I'm going in with the mid yellow and I mix it a little bit with water again to just create a quick and loose background. I will do this technique to all of the tags. I started with the yellow on this tag just to give it a kind of a different look, but I'm using similar colors. I will also make the smaller tags. I used those small tags for my chunky, messy, handmade art journal. I just shared a page in this one last week. Just check it out if you want to have some art journaling inspiration and see how I'm using these tiny tags. I let the text dry before I come back in with a turquoisey color to make some marks and different textures on top. And as there was no turquoise in the set, I will mix my own turquoise and therefore I'm using, I believe it was the cerulean blue and the viridian green plus some white. And there you can see how thick the texture of the paint is. I don't have something similar in my stash and I really like it because especially when you're making mixed media you get a really nice dimensional texture on your work with these paints, and I think mixed up on a project with other textures it's quite interesting. And what I also liked when the thicker parts of the paints dried on my project, they didn't get glossy, so they stay matte, and that's something that I find pretty important. To make this mix a little bit easier, I added a tiny bit of water with my brush, but not too much because I want to be that turquoisey paint quite opaque. That's also a reason why I added white, because I wanted to stand out against the background. And I'm just making some quick marks with this color on my tags. I have quite a lot of paint left of the turquoise, and I will just smear this over my background paper, and then I can use it for future projects as a collage paper. Here you see me just taking a little bit of the paint, mixing it with extra water to make some splatters on the text. I decided also to add some black splatters for more contrast, and I'm using the black together with water and just add some splatters to these tags. I will now let these dry completely and then come back in and finish them up with a little bit of stamping. To stamp over acrylics, I'm using StazOn ink as this dries the fastest. Sometimes I also use acrylic paint for stamping. I just didn't do it here because I wanted to have a little bit of a different texture. Not only the acrylics, because I think then the project looks a bit more interesting. The stamp I'm using here is from our new Cuff Collection 3 in the clear version. And I really like it when it's stamped just partially on mixed media pieces. It also is quite nice for jelly printing. I'm adding a little bit more texture with that ticket stamp. It's one of my favorites to create interest on a background. For some focal images on the bigger text, I stamped 2 flowers from our pencil mark set, and I wasn't sure at this stage if I wanted to color those in or leave them black and white, but then I decided to add color with watercolors, and therefore I'm using the Mai watercolors. They are also from Paul Rubens, and I love this box and often take it with me outside or on holidays because the watercolors are really nice. I usually am not a fan of the, let's say, cheap Amazon paints, but these are different. They They have a really nice quality, and I would absolutely recommend these paints if you are a beginner artist and you have never tried watercolors, you want to learn watercolor. They are really good, and they also have a nice range of metallics in there, which I'm using here on the flower center. And I also think they are great for young artists. If you have children that are interested in art and want to learn painting, this is a great gift, I would say. When my flowers are dry, I will adhere them to the tags, and I will also adhere a sentiment to each tag. I will stop recording now because it just takes not a lot of time to adhere those things, and you don't need to watch me do this. I will post some videos of the finished, some photos of the finished tags at the end. I hope you enjoyed today's video. You will find all the information in the description, and I hope we will see us next time. Bye!